Oh. Oh, hi.
Oh, hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the live stream. Hello, hello. We have a bunch of folks chiming in from LinkedIn. Hello, everyone. Christmas tree. My gosh, thank you. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Postman live stream. My name is Joyce. I'm calling in from San Francisco. We got Pricilla calling in from Malaysia. We got Danny calling in from UK. Welcome to the live stream. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Again, my name is Joyce. I'm in San Francisco, and I am the head of developer relations at Postman. Pricilla, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, Joy. So, guys, you can call me Pricilla. I'm currently based in Malaysia, and I'm taking care of an API testing team inside Billennium IT services. So, this is pretty much about me. Over to you, Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny. Like Joyce said, I'm based in the UK. I'm one of the members of the quality org at Postman. I've been at Postman for about 3.5 years, but I've been an absolute fanboy for a lot longer than that, and a massive advocate for the product. Happy to be on the stream with Joyce and Pricilla.
I can concur. We knew about Danny before he joined the team, long before he joined the team. Folks in the chat, I'm curious. This is really, I'm not a tester, but we got 2 professional testers. How many people in the chat identify as, like, sorry, what are your job titles again? I missed that.
I'm a senior tester at Postman.
Yeah, I'm like job title is team leader, but I'm happy with the QA engineer. You can call me QA engineer.
So there's a QA engineer, there's a senior software developer, software development engineer and test.
That's why I said the abbreviation of that.
Okay.
It's such a long word.
Okay. And just a bunch of random people who may or may not be testers in the chat. Okay, yes, my cats are going nuts behind me right now. Okay, so before we get to the start of this stream, it's really about a day in the life of, but also comparing and contrasting different types of jobs in the test function. So I'm interested. Part of it's going to be kind of like a talk show, and part of it we're actually going to get pretty granular. Pricilla is going to show us some of the tricks that she likes to use in her data life, and hopefully Danny will be showing us some of his tools as well. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I did not actually do this ahead of time, because we like to start with something that is in case you missed it. So in case you missed it, there's only one thing I have, and I saw Arlemi's chatting. So Arlemi, tell me if you want me to demo other things, but there's only one thing, and I think it's pretty neat because it's out to the public now. Pricilla, I think you had a sneak peek at this because you're a Supernova, but multi-select, and I'm on a Windows machine, so correct me for my hotkeys. Previously, if I wanted to like just drag like 4 of these requests over to a different collection or over to a different folder or something, I'm using Shift. And if I use Control, I can cherry pick all of my different things to drag and drop. So multi-select, not really a big, I mean, I don't know if it's a engineering feat, but it's going to be a huge productivity improvement for folks. Okay, so did Arlemy demo the Jenkins integration? So on the side, Arlemy is saying demo the Jenkins integration. I think actually we might be getting to some CI/CD if I'm not mistaken. So I'll just go ahead and stop sharing my screen and then bring chat back on. I should mention, actually, this is one of the first times we're trying this, but we have Kevin behind the scenes. Kevin, amazing. I don't want to call him, he won the Samwise Award last week. Just a really great calling the shots, shot caller behind the scenes. So yeah, a multi-select is really interesting. Danny, Pricilla, is there anything that came out recently that you're really excited about that people might not know? There's some stuff I want to say, but I can't remember if it came out yet.
Oh, say it. No, say it. So you...
About Newman? Did that come out yet? Okay, sorry. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here. We actually,
yeah.
I think we will be seeing, Priscilla's going to be showing us something in Newman. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's not one specific thing, but there's awesome things come out all the time. Lots of different changes. The teams are working on some fantastic things, and because we're rapidly releasing, you're going to see this stuff straight away.
Yeah, and I recently learned, Danny, you actually monitor or chime in on the team's GitHub issues. I didn't realize.
Yeah. So part of one of my many hats that I wear at Postman is to monitor GitHub issues and look at the issues coming in from our users and act upon them and then push them forward to the team so they're aware of these issues from the users. And yeah, just generally get a feel for the community, what they're asking for, what they're not asking for. So just generally being amongst the community, being that link between the outside community and the internal community.
Pricilla, I don't know what Billennium does, but do you also have a similar interaction with end users that report bugs?
Not really, not with the end user, but maybe with the business users, we do have to some certain extent with my client.
Okay, well, I have a bunch of prepared questions.
You're asking about the new features, right? I have a habit of checking. No, I have a habit of checking what are the new third-party integrations that Postman is keep on adding it. So in that case, I saw like recently Microsoft Teams were added. So that was pretty cool. I really loved it. I was trying to play through that. And the next one was like New Relic. Like I tried to set up my monitors integrating with New Relic dashboards. And that was also really cool, Joyce. I just wanted to give a shout out to the team who's doing that.
Maybe we'll get a chance to see that. And Sarah Vanon says, skip test in collection runner. I saw that the other day. I want to talk about that. Danny, I was asking you, like, what are skip tests for? I mean, you don't have to answer that now.
All right, it's a question for me now.
Maybe we can get to it.
Yeah, we'll
okay. Elon is saying the Postman UI is amazing. Drag and drop multi-tab. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Like, it's interesting that you mentioned the multi-tab because even the tab behavior is something that our design team looks at, and how can you be more productive and focused when you have a bazillion tabs open and that kind of thing.
Yeah, just things like refining the UI, making things a bit more streamlined, especially with the top nav bar, areas like that. There's improvements to every area all the time, so it's quite hard to say I like this one thing or this one thing really excites me because there's lots of things. So.
And I know our design team watches these streams sometimes for usability feedback. If they're seeing somebody kind of struggle or like it's a pain in the butt to like do this workflow, they actually see that and capture it. Okay, let's zoom out. I have a list of questions, but anyone that's in the chat, if you're a tester, if you're thinking about tests, if you work with testers, if you don't even know what testers do, feel free to ask your own questions. We will be pulling questions from the audience as well. But I am going to start with the most basic question. And let's start with Pricilla. Pricilla, what do you do all day?
Okay, Joyce. That was a $1 million question, but I'll try to answer that. Yeah, so every day it starts mostly with the team meetings. It's about the planning, and people call it as agile, but not everyone is typically working in the agile model. So it's like we do have the stand-ups, and once it is done, my team is mostly working the integration part, which we call it as like, and most of the integrations are done via APIs. So we have to start analyzing. So every day will be like mostly debugging the APIs or writing test cases. And if it is an execution phase, it will be executing those test cases and wrapping off if we have some bugs. And that's how a typical day goes.
So you have agile sprint groups. What's the total headcount? What is the total headcount of engineering? How do testers integrate with how many testers get assigned to a sprint group, agile group?
Okay, we do
Scrum
have
team?
in testers are yeah, testers are, we do have 12 around 12 testers in my team, and like engineering group as such, I don't have the explicit count, but each tester will be explicitly assigned to one integration. More than one can also be. So it depends upon the weightage of that integration. If that integration is handling upon multiple systems, and based on that will be like estimating, and so that the testers will be alert. So there is no explicit count like how many will be working on. So based on the complexity of the instance, we'll have different numbers assigned to that.
And if you're a QA engineering team lead, are you actually on an integration team or are you kind of like central?
Mm, we do part of being integration team, Joyce, because it's the days are changing actually. So started involving QA from day one, like even from the planning stage. So we are actually considered as of the integral core team.
Okay, and we have Demon from QA engineer from Iran. Oh, try my lumpia. Now it's getting fast and furious. We have Navia saying we love your HTML reports. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to see that. QA engineer from Bangladesh, Taufikir. Okay, so automation engineer, Sayushi. I saw a full stack developer earlier. So a bunch of different functions are chiming in now. Danny, I think it's a little bit, your role slightly different than Priscilla's. Exactly what is it you do all day?
So many things. Well, I start with coffee. That's like that is definitely a must-have my day. So my day varies. I do a number of different things. We at Postman we have a team of people spread out across the globe for the quality org, which cover every aspect of the Postman platform, everything you interact with, everything you see. And that's on both parts. We explore the product, we're writing UI automation for the product, we're interacting with the development teams and testing features that are newly coming up and in beta and stage environments. We're going out and listening to the customers and getting the feedback from them. So there's no one day that I can say that I work in the team, I do this, I do that. It's a varied amount of different things that happen throughout the day.
And what's the head count? How big is the team? I remember in the early days, we didn't even have a test function at Postman.
No, it was myself and Trent we were the only two people that we created the quality org at Postman and then grew the team from there. We've kind of, the size has fluctuated a bit. We've lost members because they've gone on to different roles and different jobs. And we've hired more people in. I think we're probably, I want to say around 10 or 12. It's not a huge team. But we do a lot of work for the amount of people we have on our team, and we influence every part of the product as much as we can.
And you are also Arlemi's best friend,
Absolute best friend.
work husband, whatever you want to call it. Because if Arlemi is late on a project, I know it's because he's chatting with Danny.
Probably. I've probably created, I reckon, about 20 emojis of his face in our Slack.
Yes, there's an emoji competition.
Just so I can absolutely put it everywhere. And it's just one of my favorite pastimes.
And we got Somia QA from Egypt, Tan from Coinworks. some SDET. So like I said SDET really slowly because I couldn't remember if it like exactly what it stood for, but like SDET is a common freelance QA engineer from Spain, Manuel. Okay. All right. So we kind of heard about what you do a little bit about how your teams are organized, I'd say. And I know this is kind of a, well, okay, here's a surprise question. So Pricilla, your title is QA engineer team lead. Danny, you're I think it's a UK thing. You identify as test. So like you're SDET, but like you identify as a tester. So like how come sometimes I hear QA, sometimes I hear QE, sometimes I hear tester?
Pricilla, do you want to chime in?
No, Danny, I was thinking recently I read a beautiful blog about like should I be called as a QA, QE, or a test engineer? I think I should have this choice. Yeah, I think quality assurance is a process. It's a kind of if you allow me, I'll try to get that link. I'll prepare well for this talk. So quality assurance is a kind of a process, if I and everyone is responsible for that. It's not just Danny. Like everyone in the team should be responsible for the quality assurance. So an integrated, complete power packed responsibility, I would say. And quality engineer, I think that's again one level upper to that. Like wherein I need to take care of like how to say like I think it has three circles. If I remember, assurance is a process, and subset of that is quality engineering, and subset of that is test. Uh, it's a kind of hierarchy. You can quality assurance is the process or responsibility of everyone, and quality engineers are something which is more and more responsibility towards, and it's not just about breaking the product end user, and tester is literally testing the application and providing the not only with the bugs, and it's just going to be like breaking and also like playing with the application. I believe this is what my definition will be. I'll try to Google it.
So
Danny, add some, Danny, please.
QA, quality assurance, is the responsibility or the focus or the mission, and then tester is like describes like the tactics of what you do.
Exactly.
Do you concur, Danny?
And quality assurance is the responsibility of everyone. It's not just the tester's responsibility.
I think obviously people have to have a role and a title within a business. It doesn't matter if I'm a QE, QA, SDET, tester, quality engineer. To me, I'm a tester. I test things. What that encompasses and what the umbrella version of that and what's underneath it could be a number of different things. I'm not saying you're just a manual tester or you test without automation or using automation to aid your testing. To me, it's just a title. I mean, I do a number of different things that probably don't come under what my role is, but it's just, for me, it's a title. But it also, I think it is geographically different, because you're saying it's in the UK, they're slightly different. I've had throughout my career probably 4 or 5 different titles, but they've all basically been the same thing for me. And so I don't really put too much pressure on the actual title itself. And the whole kind of thought of quality assurance and being the person that assures the quality of everything just doesn't really sit right with me anyway, because I don't think you can ever really do that.
So Pricilla found the blog post. Kevin, do you mind dropping a link to that? And then we'll also need to drop a link in LinkedIn. I have never held a role as a tester. I did spend 1 week in QA, the department was called, as onboarding for a product manager role. And that is a really good way to see all the parts of your product. So highly recommend that. Some folks spend like a week in support or something just to hear the voice of the customer. Some people spend time in QA just to learn all the pieces of the product. But I have worked on agile teams before where I was the product owner and I had dedicated test resources. And at that place, it was called QA. And the dynamic was never like, there was a bug, and that goes into your metrics, tester. It was more like, thank you so much for catching that before it went out, or thank you so much for catching that in production. is that what you mean by the responsibility is everyone's, like the penalty or like the report card reflects on everyone, or is it more like everyone should be doing something to ensure the quality?
I think everyone is responsible for quality, but everyone doesn't want to create a bad product. We all want to. We're all searching and moving towards the same goal. And I've seen the work that you do internal at Postman, and some of that is testing. Whether you're interacting with the product, you're raising issues. You might not have the role of the tester, but I've seen, I can witness that. And I think if we fail as a tester, we fail as a company. Our users don't see that, Danny's missed that bug. They see Postman is not doing the thing that I wanted to do. So everyone's failure if we let something out. But I think everyone's responsible to improve the product, to make changes, to make suggestions, to have that shared goal of creating a quality product for our users to use.
Do you think there's a certain personality type that we have QA people, we have testers, we have developers in the audience? Do you think there's a certain personality characteristic that makes somebody a very good tester?
I think there's definitely traits for sure.
I would say curiosity.
Inquisitive, likes to learn. You can put up buzzwords of thinking outside the box and stuff, but I think you really do need to view something from a different point of view, from a different angle. And people from different backgrounds, I think, succeed in testing because they're not necessarily hemmed into a pre-described learning model. They've taken their life experiences and injected it into their testing. So they are looking at it from a definite user point of view because they've been that user. So it's not necessarily just pure technical. It's they're taking lots of different angles and experiences from their own day-to-day life and the things they use and using that to compare against the thing that you're testing. I think that's one of the good traits as well. But there's many things that people exhibit that makes them a good tester.
I am really digging these audience comments. Everyone sharing what their title is. AJ Wilson is saying professional pessimism. Like if you're professionally pessimistic about things, you're going to try to find all the things that are broken. Suyushi says a perfectionist. Like you're not satisfied until something's perfect, right? And Ilan says curiosity and ability to want to find a problem. Danny said like, Joyce, I guess it's called user acceptance testing, maybe. I don't know. Like there might, if I find something that's not quite behaving as I expect, I report it. In the thing that I really like about working at Postman, which is not the case at every place I've been at, is that when I report a bug or weird behavior, the team is actually pretty like, thank you so much for finding that, versus like, ugh, you troublemaker.
So I've where Pricilla is at the moment, the level of interaction with users in my previous role wasn't there. I had to fight to get there because I was so far away from our user base. But now it's like direct, and even my friends use Postman, and it's just it is a bit personal, but it's I want it to be good for them as well, and I want it to be good for everyone. And this is weird to have that kind of level of interaction with people who directly use the product and can influence the feedback. Just it's so good, and I've never had that before I came to Postman.
And
there are even good. No, Joyce. I just wanted to add something to what Danny mentioned. There are even good developers right now who are so much into trust with the testers. Like once they develop the product, they really trust us, and once we give the sign off, they are actually so much happy. Like, oh my god, okay, and team provided a sign off, so I can definitely go ahead for the product. So the things are really changing, and we are maintaining a very good rapport with dev teams.
I agree. I mean, it's like a lot of different functions. Once you build that rapport and you trust the person, if they've signed off on something, like you trust them you trust that there's a certain level of, I don't want to use the word quality in this, but you know what I mean. There's a certain level of reliability in there. Okay, yeah. So let's get started with some of the Let's get started with some of the, so we talked about the day in the life of, Danny has coffee. He chats with Arlene all day on Slack. But when you get a new project, or even if you're not assigned a project, even if you're not assigned to a sprint, even if you're just kind of like tackling a new um, area, a new feature, a new product coming out, or like whatever, how do you start? And Pricilla, if we want to start with you, I don't know if you want to share your screen. Do you want to share your screen, or do you want to show us something?
Sure. So so you want me to say like when the parts, how do we actually start working? Is it?
Exactly. How do you get started with the new
Yes.
project?
Sure, choice. Just a second. Okay. So first things first. So as we all know, we all struggling with the documentation part of the system, right? So that is again a big challenge for everyone as well. So when the project is getting started, as similar to the functional spec, the design spec, we used to get the API documentation as well. So that is the first part we get started. So once we get the API documentation, we all know how does it look like, right? So first we try to understand the capability of an API, like what are the exact endpoints. So say for an example, here I have this a tiny URL. It's just an app which is used for converting your long URLs into a shorter ones. Is my screen clearly visible? Should I zoom in a
It's
bit?
good for me.
Okay. So if you see here, there are many capabilities of this URL, of this application API capabilities as such, I call it. So first I can create set of tiny URLs, I can update, I can delete all those things, and I can do some analytics, and I can use some bulk action. So this is what first step we have to do, Joyce. Like once the project is getting kickstarted, first I'll get the requirement, like how many systems are getting interacted in this integration, and how many system APIs are being connected. It is for sure it will not be like one system. At times we have to communicate with the external third party applications or APIs as well, for example Google APIs. So first that set of list of APIs, and once that is done, we'll go for this API documentation. We'll check for the API documentation of the developers. Mostly it comes with like a simple Confluence page or a Google Doc. Uh, like for well developed application, for a third party one which is already into the market and they are doing the monetization, we'll get a very good documentation like this. So this is the first place we start, and once we get this documentation, immediately we will not go into the testing part. So there comes the exploratory testing. So it's just playing through the APIs. Like we'll try to understand what's happening with this API. So we'll just try to play through that and understand how this API is going to behave as if it is in a front end. So I'll try to understand as a bigger picture first, and then once this is done, then the next part will be we'll be going ahead and writing the test cases, and based on that we'll be building the test suite. So shall I complete go in a flow with this,
So
Joy?
so just to, so when let me just try to recap. So when
Mm,
you try to approach a new topic, you usually look for internal documentation to
mm,
understand the structure,
mm.
and then you
Exactly, and the
start exploring.
capabilities. Exactly.
Okay. Danny, is that what you do? You look for internal docs?
So, I mean, I'd work it slightly differently. I'd probably be involved with the people before they even wrote the code. So, from the inception of an idea of a feature and work on that together and work out those what it should do, what it shouldn't do, what is the problem it's solving, the acceptance criteria for that, and then start from there. This seems to be slightly bit further down the line and not had those interactions. I'm interested in the exploratory part because I love exploratory testing. And how are you approaching? I mean, where do you start when you're exploring? I know you just mentioned kind of slightly what you did, but how do you? Is there any formality around it, or you just bouncing around different endpoints?
First thing is like, of course, that is the beauty of a postman, I would say, because just for that hitting the endpoints, I don't need to code. So since that UI built for me, so directly I'll go ahead and I'll just create my collection. So just by endpoint, I'll try to understand what's happening. Just give me a second. So say for this
What
one, I just yeah, Joyce.
just while you're pulling that up, that's kind of interesting that there is a difference between when you get involved. So I think, Danny, you're talking, I'm going to use a big corporate buzzword here, and I don't know if I'm using it properly, but I think shift left is where you try to, I'm sorry.
No,
But shift left,
I thought that's the one you were going to use. So
is that am I using that properly?
yeah,
Okay.
you get closer to the left, the other side, the supposed left.
So
you can shift in all directions, but shift left
you shift earlier in the process. So
get involved
normally a
earlier.
stakeholder might be, okay, it's done, it's baked. Now please tell us if it's acceptable to release into the next environment. But getting stakeholders like testers and end users involved earlier, reduces rework. Shift left.
Lots of people involved at the same time. Could be designers, product owners, developers, testers. It could be the technical writers, because obviously there needs to be documentation wrote for that, DevRel. If we're creating a feature, we want people to know about it. So how do we build up that picture, and how do we make that kind of go-to-market thing happen? But there's the earlier you can get involved in something, the better. If you're at the end of the line and then just handed something, it's harder to start from that point than it is when you've been fully involved, and you can catch bugs before they're bugs, just through a conversation, just through a question. Oh, what happens if they do this? Or if a user went to this way, what would happen? So it's just there's an opportunity there to weed out some of the kind of low-hanging fruit just through questions, just through a conversation, which you wouldn't have if the thing's already been built. So
it's human interaction.
Brilliant.
And AJ said shift left for testing, shift right for observability. Do I need to learn a new buzzword?
Like that. I like that.
Is this a thing? Okay. Interesting. Okay, Pricilla, sorry to interrupt. Please proceed.
Okay, no, Joyce, I was just trying to show you some kind of whatever you're mentioning, the shift left one. Just give me a second. So this is just just think in real time. This is the documentation just the developer have shared. So first I'll try to understand the capability of an API. And then what I'll do is this is the first simple URL. So first I'll try to understand whether there is any authentication required and what sort of authentication. So that is the first step when I started playing around. So here they have already given clearly I need a token to work on that. So, and there are some steps how to create that as well. I did it already. So I'll just show you in here. So this is my endpoint. If I'm just going to create a new collection and I'm just naming it tiny URL.
So it's a stupid question, but would your developers be using Postman? I hope so, yes. But because there's obviously two different documentation types there, where all the things that could be seen on the other screen could be done in Postman. It could have created a collection, and all these endpoints could have been there already.
Was that Swagger?
Yeah, which is cool. It's great.
Yeah. Pricilla, do your engineers use Postman?
Few people use it, and few people are so kind enough to generate the Postman collection and they'll share it to us directly, Joyce. So we'll start exploring that just a bit, and from that we'll start the test suite, which is so kind of them, right? So some people do. It depends upon projects to projects.
Do you map your exploratory testing out? So if you're exploring something and you're gaining more information all the time, are you capturing notes in any way, or mind maps and sort of written form notes and recordings?
Yeah,
of what
usually,
you're doing?
yeah. It's it depends upon the state, Danny. Say for example, if it is a kind of design phase, or even before design, it goes as a clarification question. And if not, if it is almost after the design, or once the development is completed or during the development, we log it as a defect in Jira. I think this is API.tiny URL. Just give me a second. I'm sorry for API.tinyurl.com.
We have a comment from, I don't know how to pronounce that. I know who that is, but I'm not going to
know who
dox
that
them.
Elite name.
How would you pronounce that though? Is that
You'd have to write a comment to tell us how
What?
to pronounce it.
I think a 4 is an A
James, yeah.
sound.
I mean,
No, you're not supposed to dox people.
I mean,
Devrel Kev, you're not supposed to dox people. This is Internet 101. Anyways, was saying, Danny, it might be also worth noting that Swagger doesn't play well with GraphQL, but Postman does. I cannot confirm nor verify.
so just while Priscilla's doing that,
So, yeah. So
totally
I'm just
different subject.
creating a first request. Yeah, Rani. So it's
I'll
just
save it.
creating a longer URL. So say for example, that day we got a post in a community forum. Just trying to pick the longer link. Okay. Okay, so Kevin posted this in our forum last week. So I'm just picking his longer link to convert it as a shorter link. So here it's going to be my longer link. I'm pasting it here. Okay. And this is what they have given as the body. And they have mentioned it's all required. So all the fields are required. This is how they have mentioned in the documentation, if you see here. So if I go ahead, save it and send it, I think they would need an API key to process here. Just a second.
We did have a comment from Anant
Yeah,
talking about dependence on the internet. Can you make it more responsive for slow internet? So if you're limited on bandwidth, we do have a scratch pad feature. Is it in the gear icon? It's like somewhere up in that area. There's a scratch pad so you can work offline.
API token. I think this is the value it should work. Okay, so without the codes. Just give me a minute.
So this scenario is sometimes representative of how long it takes to do something if you haven't got the things in place to start with. I know there's, I think Milton mentioned in the comments where their company is their prerequisite is to provide API documentation and collection to start testing, which is awesome because you're negating all the things that we're going through at the moment, and you've got a good starting point.
Just a second. Sorry, Danny. Okay, is my token expired? Just give me a minute.
It's another test. You're exploring expired tokens, sending a request.
Exactly,
checking what the status code is. You've got a 401. Awesome. That's what I wanted to see.
You're right. And because some places we have the option to set the token, so wherein like we can set the expiry date also, right? So that is pretty simple. If not, I just did some time back just with the session. I don't know why it's still not working, but let me try to fix it.
Just looking at this with without sending the request, those the payload there you've got obviously are they all required? Are they told you they're required? You'd start
Danny, they have mentioned.
Start excluding them to see what happens. Start testing the different formats. They're all strings. Maybe try some numbers.
You're so curious.
Well, I mean, that's how I would explore, and I'd build up a picture of what it can and can't do. How can it fail? How will it fail? Is the expired at format date? Is that important? Can I change it around? I know the American.
It's the mischief. It's so interesting because from the developer side, you're trying to go the path of least resistance. You always try to do the happy path and try to plow through it as quick as possible. I'm speaking out of turn for so many people, but I sense that just from the dev versus the test.
We're one team. There's no versus. We'll win it together, holding hands. Not
or even like security testers. Okay. I've heard like the personality trait is that they like breaking things.
Okay, I think I finally got it. I got it. So if you guys see, like based on the documentation, they have mentioned every single detail is required. That's what I see. There are no other details, right? So as Danny mentioned, if I am just clicking on the same thing, whatever they have mentioned, I'm just getting an error message saying like 422, the error message which I haven't seen before. I haven't seen this error message before. So what I try to do is like they have mentioned like tags usage is forbidden, expiration date is forbidden. So I try to delete both of them, and I try to delete save again and send again right now. Sorry. So now it's working. So what I was trying to say here is like this documentation was in place. They say that is all required, but now based on the gut feeling or based on the error messages, we have to just try to follow. So now what I'll do, Joyce, like I'll go back to developer saying like just again, you have mentioned this as required, and the request is actually working without these three fields. So this is how we start with the exploration. So as like Danny was questioning before, based on the phase, like what phase we are in, we'll be logging it as a defect or a clarification. So this is just all I wanted to show to everyone.
Cool. How receptive are people to those bugs? I want to call it issues, defects, faults. How are they received by developers?
Sorry, Danny.
If you're logging an issue and you feel it's maybe you feel it's a higher priority than the developers feel it's a higher priority, there's a clash of priorities there. Are we all in it together? It's like, right, we'll get on that right away, we'll fix it, or maybe that's not important, we'll leave it for now.
No, mostly they will fix it. They'll try to understand, and if it is of a lesser priority, they'll make sure to explain to us why this defect is not impacting the system so much, and based on that explanation, we'll come to a conclusion. They'll mostly listen to us. They're okay with the priority, and they'll fix it. This is just one example, Joy. So what we were talking about this shift left imagination, whether it's true or false. Like this is one such example, like where testers are going to do their exploratory things and they go back to the developers.
Okay, so once you start exploring, once you, I mean, exploration could go on indefinitely, right? It probably never ends.
Never ends.
So what's the next step?
Exactly. So once I'm done with my exploratory testing, I'll try to build the collection. So what for all the endpoints, like if they have mentioned about the capability of that APIs, I know what are the capabilities are required as part of my testing right now. So that is how I'll do all my research, right? So there comes my functional testing requirement and my API testing documentation and all my architecture diagrams. So concluding all these things, I know right now what are the API endpoints I have to test. So I'll build a collection, individual system collection. So there is application one. I'll build a collection for application one and application two. I'll try to build individual collections first. So that will be the next step. So based on the endpoints, after this exploratory testing, I'll try to create a perfect collection. And after that, I'll try to. This is just an example. I have just created how my a test suite looks like. So once I build my exploratory testing, or once once I'm done with my exploratory testing, I'll try to create a test suite. So how we are creating the test suite is like we do use ALM for our execution. So we do have the unique test case ID in ALM and also the test case names. So we try to match the test case names with the test case names in this folder of Postman, so that whoever the new user, the new tester who's coming into and executing the same collection can easily relate, like this test case is what they have described in ALM. And after this, what are the steps I have done in ALM? The same way I will arrange my endpoints as well here. So first I have to do an authorization, and then I have to go ahead and create record, and then this is like I have to switch back to another application. It's not just because I'm integrating multiple applications. So this is another authorization for another application, and then I'm going to get the entries. After that I have to create an access token. So this explains me clearly the process where what I have to do. So here even I'll be interacting with many applications. So this is how I'll just design my test case. So this is just one example of my test case. How does it look like? So this is how we'll build the test suite. So once I build the test suite, now I know what is the expectation for every single request, right? So for example, this authorization, I know what I have to do. Like based on my response, I have to pick my access token and I have to store that as in variable. So now I know what to do, right? So based on this, I'll go ahead and write my test cases and assertions. So I know what every step has to do and what every step has to behave in a way. So I'll try to go ahead and start adding my assertions based on that. So this is the next step. And here I have one example where I have added few assertions to clearly denote what are the sort of test cases we can add. So when it comes to the test case part, mostly the assertions will be added based on the response body. So that is where we give higher weightage. And it depends, because some people are focusing on performance and some are focusing on security, right? So based on that, the test cases weightage will be scattered. So if I'm totally into functional testing of APIs, I'll be more focused towards validating these response body. So what comes to response body is like in and around of that response body, like data type, their size, and their format, like how do they start, and is it an array, and if it is an array, what sort of array methods or array functions I have to write to handle that field. So all these logics and the assertions I'll try to cover as part of this test section. So you'll not believe. So here is what even we have to use a sort of a tester's gut feeling as well. And based on our things, whatever we mentioned in the requirement, we'll try to see whether if it is matching, and we'll start writing the test cases. So this 200 okay is a very basic test case what we write. So this is where I love handling is like, if most of my test cases in that folder or in that test case is going to just get 200 okay, instead of adding this is one of my favorite functionality in Postman as well. I don't add like to add that in a test request level to make it clumsy, because so I'll just place this sort of repetitive test cases, repetitive logics which has to be done for that test case, right? I'll try to paste it in that folder level or the collection level. So even we have the test cases here, right? So that's what another functionality which I really love dealing about. mm, I think this is what we do, Joyce. So maybe any questions or any doubts here?
So I think that's really interesting that first of all, like I if I didn't know what your project was and I came in here and looked at your collection, it's very clearly outlined, named well. As far as I know, this is like what a user might do. So you're like walking through a user scenario.
Mhm.
And then your assertions, like you're talking about different types of assertions, like functionality or potentially security or whatever. And now you're creating a folder level test so that you don't
Mm.
have to write it every single time. I'm curious. It sounded like you went from Swagger to just kind of understanding, poking at it, like loose requests in Postman, and you were like, "Hey, this is maybe not quite right. I might report something here, or but I'm going to start documenting this as a test in a collection." How come you didn't
Mm.
generate like a collection from the Swagger and then just do like 200 down the board, 200, 201, like whatever the expected status code is? Like that's how I would have done it, like just dumbly doing status code for every single endpoint immediately.
Okay. Well,
How
but
come
the
you
problem
didn't?
here, okay, not every time the developers are using Swagger, Joyce. That's a problem. Like if they are giving it up everything in Swagger, it is pretty much easy for us. But more it comes in a Confluence page, like all our endpoints points, and since it is all internal to the
Oof.
right, mostly it is from the Confluence page. So you can think how painful it is to play around after that and to build the test suite after that. So that's how we are working.
We did have a question from Intalpa. I'll go ahead and highlight this on the screen just because it was a while back. Does Postman support writing tests in Python? Danny, do you know the answer to that?
Yes, I know the answer. No, and it's all JavaScript. It's a JavaScript sandbox. So unfortunately, it's just pure JavaScript with a few handy helpers and some modules that you could use, but just JavaScript, I'm afraid.
And also, does Postman include the Monaco editor? Looks like Monaco to me.
It does, yes, it is. It's part of the sandbox. The pre-request script and test script uses Monaco. So some of the key bindings and some of the shortcuts you can use with Monaco are in that sandbox environment as well. And that's the case for, as you can see here, from the collection level, but from the folder level and from the request level as well.
I love the autocomplete. I was bragging about how sometimes the engineers and designers watch these live streams to make product enhancements where they see that we struggle. I kind of don't want to take credit for this, but myself and Arlemy were struggling through a lot of coding challenges, and the autocomplete. Pricilla, how often do you use autocomplete? Do you, or do you kind of like reuse the same tests?
Not really. We actually reuse the same test, Joyce. We use the same test.
If you're going to write a brand new test and you're like, I don't really know Chai that well, well, I type slowly, but I did learn there's a hotkey where you could just like trigger.
Yeah, sometimes I do that. That's especially when I'm doing a demo or when I'm doing some external talks, right? That time, that autocomplete has been lifesaver for me. I should admit
Yeah,
it.
very nice.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixture because there are things not hidden, but there are things to discover, especially in terms of tests. And we've got it covered at the moment with the snippets. You've got predetermined or predefined tests, like you can see on the screen, some of them. But using the autocomplete is pretty cool because you can discover new things. You don't necessarily have to go to the documentation and find, because it's in there already. And if you want to break down, PM dot, I want to look at the request. What's in the request? Okay, what's in the response? And it's easy to find those things from the autocomplete. And for me, from a pure Postman user, that was incredibly useful because I'm learning more about what I can use in my tests. Can I use the internal API to construct different requests? Things like pm.request.url is the URL of that request itself. So I can use that in a set next request and do a loop over that without writing the string of the name every single time. Or there's little handy things that I would use the Postman API for, but the autocomplete's awesome.
And Saravanan is suggesting that the autocomplete should include some additional snippets. Have you guys used, what's it called? Copilot? Is it Copilot?
I haven't used it, no.
GitHub Copilot, no.
Yeah, GitHub Copilot. You just type tab and it's just like, did you mean this entire thing of code? But maybe we can have like total tests. Like, I want to test something. What should I test? And then AI just knows.
I think it'd be a good idea to include some of those things, especially if you've made a request to an endpoint, and then with that response, you can base your test on that response. Does it need to be this status code? Does it need to return in this time? Is this payload correct? Are the data types correct? Do some schema validation on that, and also give the test to people.
Nagesh is asking this. This is the most general question I could possibly say. What about dynamic requests? Because I could interpret this a few different ways. Pricilla, like, how do you reuse a lot of the same tests? Do you infuse dynamicism into your testing?
Yeah, Joyce. Okay. If you think about, like as part of tester's life, we have a component called test data, automating test data process, because creating test data is actually one of the painful process for testers, right? Before APIs and before I was into APIs, I have done the manual injection of data into the backend directly from the SQL data or Oracle data, and that is very simple. Like I can enter hundreds of rows in the backend, and I can easily see that data in front end. And after that, what happened? I'm just trying to explain the evolution. And then what happened was, like, people started automating the front end. So that comes the front end data automation. Like they are able to click the application. That's how, like Selenium, Cypress, they are using different tools, and that's how they are just clicking the front end UI part, and they're just trying to automate the test data. We are actually for one project we did the test data automation through APIs, so that was very helpful. And for that project we actually had a very lengthy body, wherein like it was of course a very simple field like name, their details wherever, like IP, their location, country code, and all those things. That is the place I was totally falling into love with dynamic variables, and Danny knows that is one of my favorite thing. So dynamic variables was really beautiful, and based on that, I was able to create a kind of different set of test data, right? Because when you're talking about test data, you don't want to look similarly all the time. So based on the dynamic variables, I was able to create the dynamic test data. Oh, sorry, it was about dynamic request, is it? Okay. I don't think explicitly, no, I'm not handling anything with dynamic request.
I think that's a good answer, because the question itself could be answered in a number of different ways, and using dynamic variables within Postman is awesome. I know from my experience before that was even part of the product, I used to have a pre-request using a send request in the pre-request, just go out to a third-party random data API to then grab a first name, a last name, save those as environments. It was so convoluted. And then straight away I can do a double curly braces, $, and then I've got random first name straight away. And it made my life so much easier to with my tests, the structure of my test. They were awful, some of them, some of these pre-requests, and they just needed that kind of love that we gave to the dynamic variables to stop me from using third-party APIs to do exactly the same thing.
So you guys are talking about dynamic variables, like generating dynamic variables using the library Faker.js, or Danny, you're talking about going to a third-party service like random user API.
Random user API, yeah, something like that.
One of my favorite ways, I agree. Like, what's dynamic? Dynamic's such a broad word, but one of my favorite ways to infuse dynamicism into testing. Neil Studd showed me this in a previous stream, where he just has. I mean, you could use Faker to generate a dynamic variable, but then keeping track of that variable and then using it in the test's name tells you, and then asserting it. So maybe you send it through as a payload. Maybe you assert it that it came back properly. Maybe you have your functional test right there. And then also putting it in the test name, I think, is really helpful, especially if you're running like a ton of tests.
Yeah, for sure. Like for me, like even on screen at the moment with the test name, you can, because it's JavaScript, you can use, I want to get the name of this right, string literals. Might be wrong, but you can I'm trying to think of the name of it off the top of my head.
A replace method, I believe. Even I remember.
It's just kind of like taking that string
literal.
String literal. So it's taking that that request name and injecting some level of variable in it, so you can track template literals. So it's a good way of tracking stuff, like you said, through the tests, and you can do that. And someone's put it in chat on the
so
that would be the syntax
in Talpa, yeah. Well,
kind of
the curly braces should go around the dollar sign. I could type it if I wanted to. Let's do this in the chat.
It's very
we did have a comment here. Ruben is asking, in the example on the screen, does step 2 depend on step 1? How are you chaining them together?
For sure. Since it is order mentioned in order here, there is no explicit chaining required, right? Because I'm going to run it as a collection runner or through Newman, so there is no logic required. But in case if there are any logic where I have to skip in from step 1 to step 3, of course I'll be using pm.set next request method.
Are you getting an authorization token in step 1 and then using it in step 2?
Here, this is just an example.
You probably need that to then create the record.
I have it here. Yeah.
Okay.
For sure. No, here I'm doing that. Maybe I'm storing it, and here I might use it in somewhere. Yeah, this is just done. I couldn't. Yeah,
Okay, I'm just catching up
I'm
on
great in
comments
that.
here. It looks like a bunch of people have used GitHub Copilot. There's something called Code Whisperer. And here's a really good suggestion. If Arlemy is still on, It's Coder's Life says, this stream is more for software and game development category than science and technology. Today I learned that there's a software and game development category. Thank you very much for that tip. Let's see, this might be a good one for Danny. Are there any plans to include snippet editing functionality? Do you know that?
I don't know of a timeline, but there's a definite feature request open for that where people have commented on it. Please find the feature request to include custom snippets, or I can get a link in the background. But if the more people chime in or add their thumbs up to the thread or the GitHub issue, it will come towards the team. But like the team, we've got our platform's huge. We've got so many different things to do, and it's hard to work on everything all at the same time. And it's unfortunate to say that. And I'd love all these things to be in the product, but from a wider product point of view, it's very difficult to apply people to every area of the product at the same time.
And lastly, Arlemy is way faster in the chat than I am. We've already updated our category. Thank you very much. It's Coder's Life.
Nice.
Okay, so we're running a little short on time, but we haven't even gotten to automation. Actually, Pricilla, is what you're doing right now, do you consider that automation?
Of course, Joyce, because I have just designed all my test suite, and I'm just going to it's either ways. I can manually export and run through Newman. I can just use Danny's reporter. I can do that. But currently, I'm doing a POC wherein I'm trying to integrate that with one of the code repository. It's fine, whatever we use, because you guys have provided multiple options. So, say for example, if I'm just doing it with GitHub or GitLab. And from there, I'm just trying to set my Jenkins job, or whether it can be even through Docker containers. So in that way, it's going to be a complete automatic process where I don't want to manually export the collection. So that is what I'm currently doing a POC. I don't have anything solid right now, but I was able to set it up in a few minutes, which I feel it was very much helpful. Just a second. So, if any of you haven't explored these integrations of Postman, I would say this is one place which I totally like and love. Because within a fraction of like a few minutes of time, you can just set up your integrations, like wherein you don't want to worry too much like what happens next. So just by the single click of integration, and whatever happens, it's all integrated with Postman. You can see your monitor, you can even create and deploy your APIs. And when it comes to testers, you can actually store your collections. You can monitor your collections if you have already set an internal monitor, and you are not able to come and see your Postman. Say for example, if your Postman is running in some external or even a kind of virtual desktop, you don't want to go and see that every time. You can actually external things, like there are a lot of options available, like wherein you can go for Slack, Microsoft Teams, wherein like once the collection or the execution is done, you'll be getting notified. Or whenever something happens with a monitor, whether there is a failure or a success, you'll be notified. So that is where I usually come and check what are the options here. So once option for backing up the collections, if you search using there are three options, right? Like GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket is also there. So based on your requirement, you can go ahead and use it. Another thing which I like here is like it's not just the like the public GitLab things. If you have any custom domain which is related to your client also, you have an option to integrate that. So right now I have just done a very simple integration of my local one of the simple collection. So what happens is like if I'm integrating it directly, you can see my, just a second, I'll show my GitLab page as well.
And I spotted Jenkins on that integrations page
Okay.
too. So Arlemy was suggesting Jenkins is a relatively new one.
Okay. So you have, so once I clicked here, and I have to of course set my authentication. I think it's I need to get my access token here. So once I set up my integration, like obviously it'll be listed here. So whenever I change even a very small thing in my collection, I edit my test cases, I edit my variables, I edit my body, automatically my collections are backed up and they'll be stored in here. If you haven't this before, I really suggest you guys to go ahead and try this integration, because it's really pretty cool. So for this, you can do whatever you want, right? So yeah, automation, you want to do your Jenkins, or you want to go for your Dockers, whatever CI/CD pipelines you want to integrate. After this, you can easily go ahead and do it. You don't want to manually export your collection. So this is one thing which I totally love about Postman. I should admit this, right? It was totally a very good functionality, and it's really cool. So I have even tested it, I would say, like when something is APIs, like automatically if the backing up is happening or not. So I did that as well. So I really like this functionality. So currently I'm doing a POC. Maybe once I have an end-to-end thing, I'll try to write a blog, or I'll try to do a
It's interesting. There's so many different ways to run your tests as part of CI/CD. I mean, maybe we'll get a chance to
Yeah.
see Newman. Maybe we'll get a chance to see Docker. No, maybe not. But like, I always, like, as Pricilla mentioned, don't export your collection to run it. Yes, that's a given. I also tell people to retrieve it using the Postman API. But in this case, you're just using the GitLab functionality, back it up to GitLab, run your CI/CD process from GitLab, and it's all, it'll have take the latest collection.
So I guess you could, with that, because GitLab's got a CI/CD functionality, which is pretty cool. Could you use that collection in there to run with Newman, and then that latest collection, or latest version of the collection, run on CI/CD and see the outcome of those tests straight away when you've committed or you've made the change in Postman? I've never used it this way, so I'm asking a question because I'm generally interested. But
okay.
I would the thing that I liked about the way you just described something is completely the way that I wouldn't have even gone. So that's why I love Postman, because there's so many different ways you can do things. Like, even from an automation point of view, you can take that collection, put it into the runner, and manually click a button on the runner. You could add it to a monitor, and that monitor can run the collection for you. You can extract it out of Postman using the Postman API and run it in, Jenkins, GitLab, GitHub, Actions, Circle CI, Travis, all these different tools that you can use with Newman and run your collections and get that continuous feedback from your APIs. And I wouldn't have even gone the integrations route, so I love it.
Danny, how do you personally automate all of those?
At what layer? What are you talking about? It depends what you're doing, I guess. I would do a number of different things. I wouldn't have necessarily done the thing that Pricilla done, because that wasn't in my mind. I probably will have a go at that now, because I'm curious about how that works and how that can work. I've used the monitors just as a basic feedback loop for different things that I want to monitor, which I want to check the health of a particular collection, and running through just some basic flows through one of the services, or I could hook that up to an external CI/CD pipeline using Newman, take the collection, having some reporting off that. It could be my reporter, it could be any other reporter, but there's just a number of different things that you can use that I'd love to show all of them right now in the next 20 minutes. But
do you want to do a speed round? Do you have your machine set up so that we
I don't think I've got anything set up that I can use apart from the command line. So, I mean, in terms of like external tools, so I wouldn't want to.
So while Danny's setting up his machine so that we can run through all of those scenarios that he mentioned, there is a comment or question from Wads. I'm not going to dox him again. I forget. Is it Water? I don't know. You can attach GitHub to import collections, but does it work with GitHub Enterprise? Maybe you couldn't see your personal repos, but not Workplace. Unless there's some sort of bug, my understanding is once you off with GitHub, you should have access to all the repos in the dropdown. You should have access to all the ones that you have access to. So like if you don't have maybe view access or push or read or write access, then you might not see it in the dropdown. But there might be a bug, you know, you never know.
So there's one thing I can show you. It's a bit dated, but it will explain the point hopefully. If you want to share the screen, I don't want to go back to the other screen I had on. So you have to let me know if I'm sharing the screen. So
you're sharing your screen.
Kevin. Cool. So
yeah.
I can't see it. I can't see myself. So I don't know. That was weird. But if you were looking at what I can see, you'd totally understand what I meant. So I'm a huge advocate of Newman. I think Newman's just a fantastic project which will allow you to take the collections that you're working on in Postman, extract them and run them in lots of tiny different ways that are really, really awesome. What I wanted to do was trying to highlight some of the possibilities of running just a basic collection on some popular CI pipelines, really basic. So I created a project, happily named Postman CI pipeline example, which goes through a couple of these things and things like Travis CI, Circle CI, and give like a little demonstration of what the possibilities you could do. And like kind of the output you could get from some of these. Some of these are just the CLI reporter, so you just get kind of that raw output in the third-party tools output command line. Don't worry about the fail and build. We'll gloss over that. But yeah, so these are just simple sort of YAML files you can take and put into these CI/CD tools and run different collections. The syntax is slightly different for each one. They're kind of the same, some of them kind of different, but once you get the one that you enjoy using, or the flavor of the one you enjoy using, you get to learn more about the way it works. So I'm running through examples that Bitbucket, GitLab. I started recently using GitHub Actions for my personal projects and just to mess about with, because I really enjoy the way that works. And my projects are primarily in GitHub anyway, so it's just keeping everything together. But yeah, this is just a basic project that I created. I need to update it, but I think the general gist of it kind of is still there, I think. Let me see if I can go to something else. So this is kind of what it looks like. I had it over on a different tab. So this is the GitLab version of it, which I haven't run it for a long time because I was completely unprepared for doing this. But this is kind of what it looks like. So you'd have your kind of tiny repo where you've got your YAML file, which is kind of telling GitLab what to do with your collection. And this is just using their own syntax, but bringing in a Docker container, which has Newman on it, which also has my reporter on it. And this syntax kind of, it runs the command, it will tell them what to do, and then it'll output in the artifacts a reporter. And each tool has this ability to create an artifact and store it for a limited amount of time. So you can then interact with it, or you could send it to a S3 bucket or some other external place where you can store it for a longer period of time.
Danny, can you quickly show us HTMLextra? Like, I find it hard to believe that people don't know about HTMLextra, but I guarantee somebody. Toggle it.
Sorry, I'll just put it on fast mode. So yeah, this is something that I'm completely embarrassed by it, because that's just the person I am. But this is a Newman reporter that has been used quite often now by different people. It's fully customizable, so you can take this view, throw it away, and put whatever view you want on it. But this is kind of like the default template. And this is just generally a collection run. It's just a RESTful booker, which is a service created by a guy called Mark Winchingham. And it's a practice place where you can just make calls to an API and not worry about if you're damaging anything. And the reporter just kind of lists out what's going on. So it's based on iterations. You can expand some of these requests out, and it will give you information about the headers of the request, the response body, test code, give you information about different failures and what the responses were. If the failures within a request, you'd see that within a request as well. So it's just another reporting tool, and there are many out there. If you like HTML reporters, this one's pretty cool. because I made it. But there's JSON reporters, there's XML reporters, there's reporters that send it
JSON
out.
reporters. Who wants to see it in JSON?
Why not? Well, you might want to parse it in some way, so you want to send it to a different service. So I didn't want to show that, but that's it. I had it ready. But yeah,
Pricilla, do you use HTMLextra?
Yeah, Joyce, we do use that.
I'm gonna. You can unshare my screen now. I'm gonna.
So
let's go back to Priscilla's screen real quick.
Okay.
And something about HTMLextra that I didn't realize. So say you want to add a picture of your face up. So
sorry, you might want to switch back to Priscilla's screen. And now you know what I was talking about.
Can we switch back to Priscilla's screen, Kevin? Something about HTMLextra that I didn't know about was that it's the custom reporter. So you go -r or -r HTMLextra, but you can also have your own customized view, customized layer over it. So if you want to put a picture of your face in the corner, if you want to change the colors, if you don't like that dark mode toggle, as if, then you can customize it again to your own liking.
Yeah, and it's also there might be too much data there. You know, you're reporting on something. It could be a large collection that you're running multiple times. You might not want every single response body, you know, or I don't know. You might not want things, and the reporter has the ability to limit those things out and chop them out with the final report.
And I've seen the issues, the feature requests that people are like, can I have this? Can I have that? Like just to suit their own personal things. But that's the beauty of code. And we do have a couple. Danny, we need to have you back. We have some requests about training courses, and can we have an entire session about this reporting tool? So we'll need to have this back. And the invisible person, Kevin. Kevin is the mastermind running everything behind the scenes, changing scenes and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Kevin. So just keeping an eye on the time, I am going to ask one final question. And let's start with Pricilla, because Danny's going to hem and haw because I'm putting him on the spot. But like, I want to know, what is your favorite trick of the trade? And by that, I mean, like, what is your favorite thing? Say you're at like a test meetup, or say you're at a test conference and you tell somebody something and their face just lights up. What's your favorite thing? Maybe a new coworker comes in. What's your favorite test trick of the trade? Maybe it's wisdom.
Okay. No, one thing which they immediately like is, like, as you said, just because you gave an example, Joyce, when there is a new joiner, obviously, first thing, they don't want to left alone, right? So team workspace is one of my favorite, I would say, like working together. Just it gives a feeling as if a peer coworker is sitting next to you, right? When they are working together in a team workspace. So that is one thing I totally love about working in a team workspace together with my team, which was pretty simple and easy, and it's effort and time, I should say. And joiners were pretty with that. Other than that, by exporting the collections, I don't know how long the feature was existing, but I believe few months back, just accidentally, while I was exporting the collection file and the environment file together. It worked. So that is how I know, oh my God, I don't know this hack for so long. Like, while I can export a collection, I can drag and drop two files, environment file JSON and also like the collection file together. Automatically, both of them are working. Like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to import. I think I'm confusing. So when I'm trying to import, I have an option for drag and dropping a file here. Sorry. So here, two files at a time, like an environment file and also my collection file. And it was working. I really don't know this trick for so long, and it was working accidentally. I know if I'm late to the party, but this was one thing I felt worth sharing.
Yeah, you can import all the things, it sounds like. There's the team has actually done a lot of enhancements with importing. Like, you can do it from a repo, source control. You could do it from a link.
Har file. There's loads of different formats you can bring in. Yeah, it's pretty. It's a feature that's had a lot of attention over the last 6 months.
All right, and Danny, now on to you. What's your favorite trick of the trade? What's your favorite piece of wisdom? Like
like Priscilla talked about Postman. Like it's a very like I pair them and they talk about features of Postman. But me, I like talking to people. I like getting on chats and one-to-one and pairing with people and making people feel welcome, especially the new. And that could be a conference or like as we've been for the last couple of years, it's been video calls. And I like hearing people's story. I like hearing about people, not necessarily from a work perspective, but I like personal stories. I like where people are from and what they're doing, and then that builds up a relationship, and we can, we can push our relationship forward and work together. Unfortunately, I started that with ICYMI, and now I just can't get rid of him. And I'd love to delete his number from my phone, but he amuses me too much, so I can't do that.
so you're basically just
Chatty.
go ahead. Yeah.
Chatty. Yeah, I mean, there's different things that I've used in the past, especially with Postman, and worked with developers that are not known about sort of chaining requests together and taking pieces of data from a response and using that in a different request. And as soon as I showed them that, and they were amazed because they were copy and pasting the response data and putting it into another request, and they were like, "How do you know that?" I was like, "I read the documentation." Don't know. I just little things that you pick up over the course of just using the tool over the years. As soon as you told people that, then they can then tell someone else that, and you can spread that kind of knowledge around. And I kind of like those kind of nuggets of information that you can give to people, and they can tell other people. And, they look at genuinely enthusiastic about what you just told them, and they want to use that.
I think that's a good point. I mean, a bunch of people were talking about what their job titles are. I think I saw some interns too, and like
Goodness.
people that are just getting involved in the test function. And Postman has so many new users, like the rate of people just discovering Postman. Like you can tell somebody about variables and you'll just blow their mind. Dynamic variables, like, there's so much that even if you've been using Postman for a long time, I think
there's still
just
things,
sharing.
definitely.
Yeah.
There's still things that I still discover, and I think I'm
Exactly.
I'm aware of knowing a lot about Postman, but there's still definitely things that I like. Wow, that's awesome, and it's probably been in the product for a year. So because we're continuously doing great things all the time.
It happened.
All right.
It almost happened the same scenario with me as well, Joyka. Last year, after one talk, are actually telling me like this collection level test cases or the folder level test cases, what I mentioned, they aren't aware of that. So they are super happy to. And as Danny mentioned about this variable thing, how amazed they were. Like it happened the same with this collection level test cases as well. They were they said like, oh my god, now I refactor my entire code. Thank you so much for showing this, Priscilla. So that was a kind of get after every talk or knowledge sharing sessions, right?
What are yours, Joyce? What's your words of
I
wisdom? What are your top tips?
I just said it was just like little tips, the little tips. Thanks for listening, Danny. So we do close out with shout outs. So I'm going to give you a heads up and then I'll start because, again, just to give you time. So we always close out with community shout outs. If you have an event that's coming up, if you just wrote a blog post, Wads, I feel bad for calling him Wads if that's not what he wants to go by. Wads, if you have anything you want to share with the community, anybody can drop a link in the chat right now. If there's any kind of thing that you created that you want to share with the community, go ahead and drop a link.
Pretty cool, challengey, gamey thing that you might want to share with people.
Wads, drop a link. So I have one thing that I want to share, and Kevin, if you wouldn't mind dropping a link to this. I want to give a shout out for our Supernovas program. And I don't think I mentioned it at the very beginning, but I'm not sure if people know this, but Pricilla is one of the Postman Supernovas. We have an ambassador program. Pricilla has been giving talks internationally. You've been traveling to give talks about testing, trying to create a more inclusive space, welcoming people to the test community. And I think Supernovas are a lot about like just kind of sharing stuff that they know with the community, and a lot of times it comes into fruition with public speaking. So I'll give a shout out for the Supernovas program. Pricilla, do you have any community shout outs?
First thing I want to I even see a message also similar to that. All of you guys, man, thank you so much for that, because when I started the Supernova program also, I was like quite doubtful whether I'll be make it, Joyce. But and now you call me as a speaker, right? So all these things happen just because of the Supernova program. So I would really like to thank all of you guys, and especially when I started my API testing journey, Postman was my companion. I would say that just love at first sight. It's not just because of the ambassadorship program. Even without that, I'll continue to love this tool. So that's how I'm being genetically engineered, because those starting days, any new totally new to API testing, even till this date, I suggest them to start with Postman, because this invisible guys, and Postman will give you a feel about looking, and how the APIs are look and feel. So that's one thing I totally love about Postman. So keep up doing your good work, and thank you so much for all the support and motivation you guys provide to me. And that I'll just think. So we are actually since community which is running out base, we are actually running about it's up of course it's about to close the auditions, but you are looking for a space to start your public speaking career, and you wanted to know, like you're totally confused where to start and how to. We are actually running a type of contest, so I'll share a link here. So if you guys are really interested, want to participate, let me know. That's it, Joyce. If
You
there
have
is
to
anything, I'll
try
drop the
out
link
for it?
again. Thank you.
Well, that's intimidating.
Yeah, it's super voice. I'll share the link
Okay.
just a second.
So Priscilla's going to be sharing a link. Danny, any shout outs?
Not specific shout outs, but definitely for our Postman community. So our community site is a place where people can go and ask the questions that they would love to know the answers about. And they could be tiny things, they could be huge things, they could be really complex scenarios. And we have brilliant people out there, especially James, who does a great job with responding to people and offering them help and solutions whenever he can. And he's just one of many people who jump onto our community site and just share their knowledge with people. And it's incredible to see from the internal Postman, but from an external user point of view, it's nice to have that repository of answers and a place to go if you do have an issue with something, and you're not kind of just throwing it out to the ether. You know that someone's going to respond to you in a good amount of time, and hopefully unblock you and give you some more knowledge and push you along again.
I think, yeah, the community forum, Danny once again doxed James. So we'll just say James.
So cool, and
James. James is
did it.
super super helpful on the forum. And actually Devrel Kev, I just doxed Kevin, but I already talked about Kevin, running this behind the scenes. Both of them, Pricilla, I see you answering questions too. Danny Dainton in leaderboards. I mean, none of this is part of anybody's job description. This is not an expectation, and they're just trying to help people. And again, if you just know a little bit more than the next person, then you can answer a question. I love it when I see new people coming to the forum and answering questions.
It's so good. It gives me a lot of sort of joy, because it's something that I wanted for a long time. When a few years ago, when it was it was a small little community, and now it's massive, and there's so many different things on there. But it's also a place to share new projects that you might be working on, or new games, or new challenges that you might want to amplify and share with people.
I would love to hear about new games that are going on.
So would I. I would love to hear about new games.
Yeah. So if anybody has any in the audience has any community shout outs, feel free to drop a link to anything that you're working on. But also in the community forum, we have a category called Community Showcase. So if you write a blog post, if you are going to be giving a talk, you can post it in events. There's a lot of ability to share with the broader Postman community. It's a huge community. So tap into it. If you're part of the stream watching, you're part of that community. Okay, and with that, I will give a shout out for next week's live stream. I believe Ian is going to be here working with Dolby API. So Dolby, the I was going to make the sound, but I think that might be a different company.
What
Dolby is
sound? What
video.
sound were you going to make?
Boom. Is that it? Is that
I don't
Dolby?
know. I don't know. I
think
just
that's
wanted to hear the
company.
sound. I don't know
Okay.
what the sound is.
So Ian is going to be here with a live stream with Dolby, and they're going to be working with audio and video APIs. Like, how does audio work? Like, what's the file types? Like, it's really kind of interesting. Yes, and I did actually make the wrong sound. With that, thank you so much, Pricilla. I know it's probably super late right now in Malaysia. Danny Dainton, it's a little bit late for you too.
Go and put the kids to bed. That's my next task.
Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
See ya. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Yeah.